Okay, hello everyone. I just wanted to hurry up and get this out of the way while it was still fresh in my memory, but this is going to be the history of the Lenape. And the Lenape, traditionally, the territory of the main group who consider themselves Lenape was basically from the west border of Massachusetts all the way around through New Jersey into Delaware, kind of along the east coast. It was about kind of half of what's now the state of Delaware, but pretty much they owned all of New Jersey, a bit of New York, half of Long Island, a little bit of Pennsylvania, and a little bit of Maryland, and a little bit of Delaware. This land kind of got settled primarily first by the Netherlanders, who established what is now the city of New York after buying the island of Manhattan from the natives, and kind of spread south from there as Plymouth was established in the north in Massachusetts. And also, shortly after that, through the Chesapeake Bay, there was also another colony that I was unaware of called New Sweden, which came into being. Although things did not particularly go well, the Netherlanders really could not establish that much of a foothold. They kept trying to expand and allow new colonists to come into their colony, but they kept getting distracted by a lot of wars, and particularly with the Lenape themselves, who ceded the island of Manhattan to them, but really had a lot of problems negotiating further territory, and became very angry about it. Furthermore, the Swedish formed a good relationship with the Seska Hanok, who were an Iroquoian people directly to the west of the Lenape lands, from kind of the northern tip of the Chesapeake all the way up through Maryland and Pennsylvania. And they gave the Susquehannock weapons, which the Susquehannock then, when they started to feel threatened by colonial expansion, attempted to eradicate the Lenape and take their territory. And since the Lenape were in conflict with the Dutch, they did not really ever get a chance to get good weapons throughout this entire period, European weapons. So they lost some territory, but they remained in the general area. Eventually, though, in some sort of war, the Netherlands somehow ended up swallowing New Sweden. I think it was a much larger war than just being between the Netherlands and Sweden. That doesn't add up to me, that the Netherlands would win that war, but the New Netherlands took control of New Sweden and got that entire general area all along from New York all the way down to the that peninsula there along the side of the Chesapeake Bay. And although they now had English colonies to the north and to the south of them, and when the Quakers come into the equation, the Quakers move into Pennsylvania. And a lot of the Quakers not understanding much of the land ownership and contracts settled in New Netherlands land, which brought England into conflict with the Netherlands. Although William Penn, the man who settled Pennsylvania, the leader of the Quakers at the time, managed to negotiate it out. And the New Netherlands lost a little bit of land, creating kind of what is now the border of Pennsylvania in the east. And kind of relations stayed pretty well, but this also split the Lenape between England and England and the Netherlands. Now, I've also already covered King Philip's War. If you want to learn more about that, look at the Abenaki video, where some more of the Lenape people of New York sided with the Abenakis in King Philip's War to attempt to drive the English out of the colonies up in New England, which did not go well, and of course a lot of the Lenapes in New York there left and kind of formed this weird Shattuck tribe. I was wondering for the longest time why the heck that sounded German. That is apparently originating from the Dutch, so I'm guessing those people must have been mostly Lenape who formed that tribe. But anyway, going back into this, the Lenape are now split in between the Netherlands and Pennsylvania. What's furthermore, getting Pennsylvania now completes the circle of English-controlled territory. They had Virginia and they had New England, and with Pennsylvania they have now completely encircled the New Netherlands and cut it off from expansion, any further expansion whatsoever. And this leads to a war. The Netherlands do lose the war. They manage to gain back New Netherlands in a second war, but lose it within a year back to New England again, and their prospects are permanently done really early on in the 1600s. At which point, New York gets renamed. It originally had a completely different name from Dutch. But the Lenape, of course, had not been pleased this entire time. However, William Penn, again, an excellent negotiator, really worked with the Lenape and tried to help them to establish them very well, give them their own land, kind of negotiate rules between the Quakers and the Lenape, and really went a long way to try to respect them. This, of course, being during the time when there is still a New Netherlands. But two things happen in this time period. First off, we've also gone through the fact that the English kept trying to convert the Abenakis to Protestant Christianity, and the French then followed by trying to convert natives to the Catholic variety. And of course the only thing that ever gets publicized is when this goes well and when it works out, which of course European Christians cannot see anything that they're destroying as possibly being negative, because they're converting people to Christianity, and that's a good thing. So the Netherlands, they primarily have their own church, the Medallion Church. And the Medallions begin trying to convince a lot of the Lenape to convert to Christianity, although unlike the others, this is inspired more so from a good place. They don't want, they do want the natives to be Christian before they intermingle and be one society, and they think this is going to work out for them because of what happened further north. But they don't force it like a lot of the other groups of Christianity further north did. However, when William Penn dies, his sons take over, and the sons have a very different view of Native Americans. They try to they try to negotiate taking a lot more land from the Lenape, which does not go over well and does not work. And when they can't do it legally, they actually sanction a treaty that was never signed, that was drafted but never actually signed by the appropriate people. And they take this treaty and use that as a reason to banish the Lenape from their lands. The Medallion Church at this time also feels persecuted by them being pushed out, by the New Netherlands being absorbed by New England. And so as time goes on, the Medallion Church decides to resettle. They move to across the St. Lawrence from New York State in Canada and take a lot of their Lenape people with them. A lot of the Lenape who stay, and more of the Medallion Church who stays, they get taken in by the they get forced out of their land by more further expansion by Quaker groups and by Virginians moving north. And eventually the Quaker and the Pennsylvania government decide to reestablish them and move them to Ohio, which is largely unpopulated at this point. At this time, the Erie, who controlled northeast Ohio, were kind of reducing their numbers, and the Shawnee, who controlled southern Ohio and a lot of the Ohio River, were starting to move much further southwest. So it creates a decent-sized gap in Ohio, right around the area between Akron and Sandusky, right around Cuyahoga, what's now Cuyahoga County. And so they decide, we're going to take the Lenape from New Jersey and move them to Ohio, to northeast Ohio. And they generally, this works out until the Revolutionary War breaks out, with the Lenape living more or less in kind of their own separate society, although the Medallion Church, again, did go with them. The remains of the Medallion Church, who did not go to Canada, then moved to Ohio with the Lenape to escape persecution themselves, and converted a lot more of the Lenape, splitting the group equally. When the Revolutionary War breaks out, the Lenape get very confused about which side they're on, and a lot of groups of the Lenape, a lot of particular individuals, begin trying to politicize them one way or the other. Eventually they leave northeast Ohio, and a lot of them move further south, to right about where the border between Kentucky and West Virginia is, that region of Ohio, to try to escape, to try to stay out of the conflict altogether. They want nothing to do with it. Some begin to try to help the British in the Revolutionary War, which surprisingly, there was a lot of the Revolutionary War that was fought in Ohio. The British had forts in Michigan and in Ohio, and there was a lot of wars fought in that region that really aren't covered, surprisingly, by history, even in the United States. But the Lenape who stayed also decided they were going to help the Americans, and both sides were totally convinced that what they were doing was the key to their future. And eventually this just created such an overwhelming confusion from both sides that both sides just literally labeled them all enemies and tortured and burned them out of their homes and killed them remorselessly throughout the entire American Revolution. But of course, the Americans win. The Lenape stay in Ohio, although as more and more people begin moving here, they get pushed further and further west, eventually moving back northwest from where they were stationed to around Dayton, Ohio, and then from Dayton getting pushed into Indiana, until about 1818, where the U.S. government comes to them and with a treaty. Said, okay, we need the land, people want the land that you're on, we need it. What we're going to do is we're going to give you more land much further west. And the Lenape agreed to this on top of a sum of money, which amounted to about $4,000, and they leave Indiana as a tribe and move to Missouri. Unfortunately, the United States now at this point has the Louisiana Purchase, and there were two colonies on the Mississippi River that were French, which are now American, which were the New Orleans, the Louisiana group, and another French colony that existed right at the confluence of the Ohio and the Mississippi. Since they're moving in on each other now, a lot of the Lenape said, screw this, and left America altogether and moved to Texas, which at this point is still Mexico. Although they tried to petition Mexico for more rights and native territory, Mexico largely ignored their existence, but when Texas got its independence, they were actually very, very hospitable to the Lenape and several other native groups, even many groups like the Lenape who were essentially running away from their own land and their own territory that had been taken over. But a lot of the Lenape did stay in the United States, and just like you would assume, again, the United States comes to them, we need your land, we're moving you to Kansas. So that happens, and then we get Texas, we need your land, all of you Lenape who are in Texas are moving to Oklahoma. And then all you Lenape who are in Kansas are also moving to Oklahoma. And eventually they all got consolidated into living on the same reservation that they had placed the Cherokee after the Trail of Tears in Oklahoma. And out of this, it created a really kind of awkward situation that I'm surprised this went on as long as it did. It lasted from the 70s until 2004. Where the Cherokee, the Lenape, and the U.S. government got into this massive three-sided legal argument about whether the Lenape were Cherokee or not, just because they lived on the same reservation. And the Cherokee, the Lenape wanted to be independent, the Cherokee wanted the Lenape to be Cherokee. The U.S. government did not care one way or the other, but said they're all living on the same reservation, so they're the same tribe. And eventually it ended in 2004 with the Lenape finally being considered a separate tribe and being appeasing the Cherokee by moving their giving them a new reservation in Pennsylvania, where they are settled at this point. Although this is an interesting historical fact, though, there are a lot of people in Ohio in particular who think that they have Cherokee ancestry who are actually Lenape. And I just figured this out like 10 minutes, like an hour ago. It is very funny. But the basic point of this is the Lenape territory was originally colonized by the Netherlanders who speak Dutch. Netherlands is the only country that still speaks Dutch, but originally there was a much larger territory of Dutch-speaking kingdoms in Europe, of which the Amish originated out of. The Lenape got pushed to Ohio and then continually moved until they made it to Indiana. When the Amish came to America, they settled in Indiana, and because the Amish also spoke Dutch, they intermingled their communities pretty closely until the Lenape moved to Missouri. And there's a very long-standing history of people marrying into the Amish and leaving the Amish. On top of that, I've known a couple of Amish people growing up who actually they were, one was like half-blooded native, the other mostly native, who came out and said, we're Cherokee. And I remember both of them, I asked them where were the Cherokee from, and they said, oh, they're over in Delaware, they're over in Pennsylvania by the Cherokee Bay, which I really didn't think too much about when I was little, but they meant the Chesapeake Bay. They're definitely Lenape, they're not Cherokee. I'm pretty sure the Cherokee existed just in the territory that they had, and then the Trail of Tears happens in Oklahoma. Those are the only two places the Cherokee ever were, to my knowledge. So that's something that should be taken into account. Most people, if you're in Ohio, you think you're Cherokee, you're probably Lenape. But that's pretty much all I've got. Thank you for listening to that. Have a nice day.